"Human," she said with unnerving calm, her bright eyes locking on his. "You declared mating intent." Kalen blinked up at her, very awake now. "I what?" "You took off your coverings," Zara explained, tilting her head, the movement fluid and alien. Her skin was the color of twilight amethyst, and her hair flowed like liquid silver in the soft crimson light of the ship's HAB module. That is the ancient sign. If you love HFY stories of humans changing the galaxy with heart and humor, subscribe and join our next adventure among the stars. The gentle thrum of the UISS Horizon's engines was a constant vibration through the curved walls, a sound Kalen had learned to sleep through. But this was different. This was weight, warmth, presence. He stirred in his bunk, tangled in the standard issue sheets that were, until moments ago, perfectly peaceful. Then he felt it, the pressure on his hips, the warmth radiating through the thin blanket. His eyes snapped open and he froze. A woman, no, not a woman, not human, was straddling him with the unnerving composure of a statue. Her features were elegantly sharp, her skin a shade of deep purple that seemed to absorb and refract the room's light, and her eyes glowed with the soft, steady light of binary stars. She studied him with the detached precision of a scientist cataloging a new species of insect. And for reasons his sleep-fogged brain couldn't begin to process, she was completely, utterly, devastatingly naked. Kalen Voss was not supposed to be here. Not here as entrapped beneath a luminous alien diplomat who apparently thought he'd proposed marriage. More like here as in the only human structural integrity specialist on a deep space cultural exchange vessel run by the most literal-minded, protocol-obsessed species in the quadrant. The Vex were brilliant, beautiful, and about as flexible as a neutron star. Their social interaction guides read like assembly instructions for a quantum computer. Asterisk emotional query detected. Initiating standard response sequence 7B. Asterisk so when the Horizon's newest and most junior technician, a chronically overworked and underappreciated human named Kalen, signed his 6-month contract, he'd expected weird food, confusing translations, and a profound sense of isolation. Not this. Not a gorgeous, naked ambassador perched on his lap at Odark 100. "Zara," he croaked, his voice cracking as he tried desperately not to move a muscle. Please tell me this is some kind of standard Vexian wake-up call." She blinked, slow and deliberate, as if processing his tone through multiple layers of cultural translation. "Yes, a wake-up call between bonded mates." Kalen's stomach performed a complex zero-gravity maneuver and dropped straight through the deck. "Bonded? What? Now? Wait." She leaned forward slightly, the ambient light catching the flawless planes of her amethyst skin. "You slept uncovered." In Vexian culture, this act before a witness declares a readiness to merge essences, to forge a permanent bond. To refuse after such a declaration would cause profound dishonor to both parties, their familial units, and their third-generation offspring. He stared, dumbfounded. "Zara, humans just sleep that way. It's comfortable. It's normal." Her brows, a shade darker than her skin, furrowed in genuine confusion. "Comfortable." She repeated the word as if it were a complex mathematical theorem. To be so vulnerable, without fabric to signify belonging and intent, this is not normal. This is reckless. He tried to inch backward, but the bunk was narrow, and the ship's low gravity made the movement a slow, awkward flail. Her silver hair drifted around her shoulders, a few strands brushing his chest, and he shuddered. "You appear distressed," she noted softly. "Perhaps I should initiate calming contact." The Vexian method involves synchronized breathing and light epidermal stimulation. "Please do not." Fumble the edge of his crumpled blanket up to his chest. "This is a giant misunderstanding. I swear on every star in the Orion arm." The cabin door hissed open with a sound that felt like judgment. A cheerful mechanical chime followed. Tension. Privacy field integrity compromised. Failure logged. Maintenance ticket generated. Perfect. Just perfect. Hovering in the doorway was his immediate supervisor, a floating, slightly dented spherical drone designated P3X, or PEX, It hovered with the unhelpful detachment of a forgotten appliance. Good morning, Technician Voss. Ambassador Zara. Are you initiating a binding concordance ceremony? No. Kalen shouted. Yes, Zara said at the exact same time, her voice serene. They stared at each other. Pex emitted a low-pitched beep. Discrepancy detected. Logging incident under cross-cultural misinterpretations. Severe. Priority high. Shall I alert command and the interspecies ethics board? Don't you dare, Kalen hissed, clutching the pillow to his chest like a shield. Zara frowned, her glowing eyes shifting between him and the drone. Why conceal yourself now when the intent has already been witnessed by the envoy drone? The declaration is valid. Because, Kalen muttered, his cheeks burning, humans are cursed with something called modesty. She blinked again. Shame-based concealment of functional form. A fascinating, if highly inefficient, behavioral relic. He sighed, running a hand through his disheveled hair. Yeah, well, we've been perfecting our inefficiencies for millennia. He finally managed to sit fully upright, Zara shifting her weight with effortless, graceful poise but making no move to get off his lap. The situation was rapidly hurtling from a personal nightmare to a career-ending, sector-wide scandal. The Vex were already wary of human emotional volatility. An accidental mating proposal to a high-ranking ambassador would get him booted out of an airlock or worse, assigned to paperwork duty for the rest of his natural life. Zara, he said, trying to inject some semblance of diplomacy into his tone. Okay, let's just reset. No banding. No merging essences. No misunderstandings. I'll get my tools and fix the privacy field right now. You go back to your ambassadorial suite, and we can both pretend this bizarre little moment never, ever happened. Impossible, she interrupted, her tone leaving no room for argument. A witness was present. The union has been acknowledged by the ship's central AI. To retract the declaration now would offend the Tripartite Council, the Guild of Genealogists, and at least one fertility deity whose name does not translate well into your auditory range. Kalen's eye twitched. You're kidding me. I do not kid, she stated, her expression utterly serious. Though I have read that humans enjoy this kidding. It involves factual inaccuracy for the purpose of social bonding. He groaned, letting his head thump back against the cool wall. Oh stars. I'm doomed. I'm actually doomed. Zara placed a hand on his shoulder. It was warm, surprisingly gentle, and sent another unwelcome shiver down his spine. Do not despair, Kalen Voss. We shall learn each other's ways. Perhaps this is not a disaster. Perhaps this is destiny. Destiny, he muttered, closing his eyes. Right? Destiny in the form of a faulty privacy field and a catastrophic cultural faux pas. The drone, Pex, beeped again, this time with a note of finality. Commencing official documentation. Technician Kalen Voss and Ambassador Zara of the Vexian Concordance. Status. Mate locked. Pending confirmation and consummation rituals. Kalen slumped forward, his forehead now resting on his knees. I'm never sleeping naked again. Zara tilted her head, a thoughtful expression on her face. Then I shall sleep unclothed in your stead, to maintain the balance of intent and honor. He squeezed his eyes shut tighter. Zara, please, stop. By midday ship time, the rumor had metastasized. Kalen had been the subject of 7 separate gossip threads on the crew's internal network, 4 congratulatory shoulder pats from bemused colleagues, and 1 deeply unsettling message from the ship's HR algorithm reminding him that cross-species fraternization, while not explicitly forbidden, required the completion of Forms 78B through 78G and a mandatory psychological evaluation. He buried his face in his hands at his workstation in the structural integrity bay, the cool metal of the console a minor comfort against his feverish skin. I swear on my favorite wrench, he groaned to the room at large. I am not married. Across the table, his coworker, a hulking reptilian mechanic named GRX, chuckled, the sound like rocks grinding together. His scaled shoulders shook with amusement. It is too late, Softskin. The ambassador has claimed her prize. She accessed the public crew manifest this morning. She now wears your familial sigil upon her formal attire. It is very traditional, very romantic. The entire engineering corps is swooning. Kalen's head snapped up. My what? GRX flicked his forked tongue. Your family symbol. She had it replicated as a holographic pin. It is displayed proudly on her chest. A bold statement. Kalen's stomach, which had only just begun to settle, plummeted once more. Oh, you have got to be kidding me. The bay doors slid open with a soft hiss. Every head in the room, a mix of species from furry to chitinous, turned in unison. Zara glided in, a vision of alien elegance amidst the greasy, utilitarian chaos of the engineering bay. She wore her standard ambassadorial gown, a sleek, dark garment that seemed to drink the light, but pinned just over her heart was a small, shimmering holographic emblem, the personal identification sigil Kalen used for his tool locker and personal datapad. It flickered with a soft blue light, a stark contrast to her amethyst skin. Beloved, she greeted smoothly, as if addressing him in a room full of their peers was the most natural thing in the galaxy. I have brought you sustenance. He froze mid-reach for a hydrospanner, the tool forgotten in his hand. Beloved? He whispered, horrified. Yes, she said, setting a tray on his workstation with a ceremonial grace that felt utterly absurd next to a half-dismantled plasma conduit. I consulted the Human Nutritional Archives. This is a designated comfort meal from your North American cultural zone. Caffeine essence and baked carbohydrates. He eyed the tray. There was a mug of steaming black liquid and 2 slices of toasted bread. That's coffee and toast, Zara. You made me breakfast. I synthesized it, she corrected, utterly serious. The aroma component for the caffeine essence nearly destabilized the biocontainment field in the galley. Your species' preferred stimulants are dangerously, and I must say pleasantly, fragrant. From under the table, GRX let out a sound that was somewhere between a cough and a choked laugh. Kalen kicked him, hard, and was rewarded with a satisfying grunt. Zara's head tilted. You are displeased. No, he sighed, deflating. I'm just trying to avoid a diplomatic meltdown. That's all. She said, her expression brightening perceptibly, the glow of her eyes intensifying. Then you should relax your facial muscles. It will convince the other crew members that we are content in our union. Appearances are crucial for morale and social stability. What? Before he could formulate a protest, she stepped closer, into his personal space, and very gently took his face between her warm, smooth palms. The entire engineering bay fell so silent he could hear the hum of the distant reactor. Every worker suddenly found the floor, the ceiling, or their own tools to be objects of profound fascination. Smile, Zara commanded softly, her thumbs stroking, whispered, his voice strained, his face on fire. She smiled for the both of them, a radiant, confident expression that was blinding in its perfection. The ship's internal camera system chimed a soft, automated alert. Positive social display detected. Crew morale index rising. Logged. He was going to die. He was absolutely going to perish right here, on the deck of the engineering bay, a victim of terminal humiliation. When she finally released him, he staggered back a step, his ears burning so hot he was surprised they weren't glowing. You know this is completely against 12 different protocols, right? Incorrect, she replied, her posture flawless. I have studied all relevant sections of the Horizons Code of Conduct. Nowhere does it forbid public displays of affection if both parties are. She searched for the human term. Mutually flustered. I think you mean consenting, he muttered, rubbing his cheeks where her hands had been. I am fluent in your language, Kalen Voss, she said primly. The emotional subtext, however, remains a fascinating challenge. Later, in the main corridor, she walked beside him as if she were his royal guard, her movements a study in elegant, rhythmic poise. Vexians didn't just walk. They processed. Every step was measured, every turn a deliberate act. Crew members nodded respectfully as they passed. One of the Talaxians, A species with 4 arms and a mischievous grin, winked broadly. Kalen leaned slightly toward Zara, keeping his voice low. You realize they all think we're an item now? We are, she stated, not missing a beat. Until the declaration is formally rescinded by a council of elders, which cannot be convened for another standard cycle, we are an item. A bonded pair. He rubbed his temples, feeling a headache brewing behind his eyes. You make it sound like a scientific thesis defense. It is, she said. A longitudinal study of cross-species compatibility under conditions of sustained, intimate proximity. The data we generate will be invaluable. The Xenopsychology Council will find the results fascinating. So I'm an experiment, he said, a bitter note creeping into his voice. Her voice softened, losing some of its clinical edge. Everything worth understanding begins as one, Kalen. He didn't have an answer for that. That evening, he found her waiting for him in the mess hall. She had commandeered a small table in the corner, which she had set with meticulous care with twin plates and utensils that gleamed under the adjusted lighting. You humans eat socially, she explained as he cautiously sat down. I have reviewed your visual documentaries. The shared consumption of nutrients is a primary method for fostering emotional synchronization and strengthening pair bonds. You mean a dinner date? He muttered, poking at the mysterious, lumpy substance on his plate. Yes, she said earnestly. Dates. I have scheduled 7 for this week to ensure a robust data set. He nearly choked on his own saliva. 7. Relax, beloved, she said, a faint, almost imperceptible smile playing on her lips. You will adapt. Your species is remarkably resilient. For a long moment he just stared at her. The way she regarded him, not mockingly, not predatorily, but with a deep, unwavering curiosity, made it impossible to stay truly angry. Beneath the perfect poise and the baffling logic, there was a genuine, almost desperate effort to understand him, to bridge a chasm of biology and culture that was light years wide. She misread his silence. You are displeased. Did I overseason the nutrients? The archive mentioned salt and pepper. I attempted to replicate the atomic structure. No, he said quietly, surprising himself with the warmth that crept into his own voice. It's just not something I'm used to. Pulsing slower, a sign he was beginning to recognize as calm contemplation. Then we are both learning, Kalen Voss. He smiled then, a small, real smile. Guess we are. By the time he retreated to his quarters that night, the ship-wide rumor mill had evolved from accidental bonding to legendary love story of the human and the amethyst ambassador. There was even a trending meme in the crew forums titled Voss's Naked Negotiations, featuring a poorly drawn cartoon of him waving a white flag made of a sheet. He buried his face in his pillow and muttered, I am never, ever living this down. From the doorway, her serene voice cut through his misery. I have brought you a sleep wrap. He jerked upright. She stood there, holding a shimmering metallic blanket, clearly hand-woven from some advanced material, with intricate, alien sigils embroidered along the edges. He blinked, speechless. You made that? She nodded, her silver hair catching the light. It is woven from thermally regulated polymer threads. It is also flame retardant, in case of mating friction. He groaned, feeling the blush return with a vengeance. Zara? Yes, beloved? Nothing. Just, thank you. He took the blanket. It was surprisingly soft. Good night. She smiled, a genuine, satisfied expression that lit up her whole face. Affirmative. I wish you a night of good and safe rest. The door slid shut, leaving him alone, red-faced, and suddenly, helplessly laughing into the darkness. The official notice arrived with the cheerful chime of the ship's AI during breakfast. Kalen was halfway through a cup of blessedly normal, non-electrified coffee when the voice echoed through the mess hall. Attention all personnel. Crew pairing experiment Project Harmony now enters Phase 2. Technician Kalen Voss and Ambassador Zara are assigned to joint quarters for a 72-hour cohabitation trial to evaluate domestic compatibility and interspecies bonding potential. He stared blankly at his toast, the announcement feeling like a physical blow. "No," he whispered to his plate. "Absolutely not. There has to be a regulation, a clause, something." Across from him, Zara folded her hands with an air of perfect serenity. "I accept the terms of the trial." His head snapped up. "You what?" "It is a logical progression," she stated, as if commenting on the weather. "We are already bonded in the public record. This trial will solidify our standing and provide invaluable data. I have, in fact, already prepared a preliminary schedule." Kalen let his fork clatter onto the tray. "You made a schedule for living together." "Of course. Humans, my research indicates, require structure and predictability to mitigate anxiety. I have allotted time for work, sustenance, hygiene, and 10-minute blocks of designated solitude between grooming and recharging by scrolling aimlessly." He muttered something unprintable under his breath. She noted it down on her sleek data slate. New term logged. Aimlessly appears to indicate a state of low-grade distress or cognitive idling. Their new shared quarters were a designated diplomatic suite, larger, more luxurious, and currently being reconfigured by Zara with an efficiency that was mildly terrifying. By the time he dragged his duffel bag to the door, the main living area was transformed. Softly glowing orbs hung from the ceiling, emitting a low hum that vibrated in his teeth. Crystalline bowls sat on every surface, releasing aromatic vapors that smelled like a forest after a lightning strike. Her set of ceremonial armor, polished to a mirror shine, rested neatly on a stand beside his battered, grease-stained toolbox. The juxtaposition was absurd. "This environment has been optimized to encourage positive bonding interactions," she announced proudly, gesturing to the pink-tinged lighting. "I have adjusted the spectrum to mimic your terrestrial sunset. It is scientifically proven to stimulate feelings of romance and tranquility in your species." "It's pink," Kalen said, dropping his bag by the couch he intended to claim as his bed. "Romantic pink," she corrected. He took a deep breath, the scented air making his nose itch. "Okay, ground rules. Number 1. No waking me up by sitting on top of me. Ever again. Number 2. No analyzing my every move like I'm some kind of fascinating lab rat. And for the love of every single star in this cursed galaxy, no more experiments involving food that glows in the dark or has electrical properties." She considered this, her head tilted. "Agreed. In exchange, you will adhere to the following. Do not enter my designated meditation bubble when it is active, do not criticize my daily sentiment rituals, and do not attempt to decode Vexian pheromonal communications without proper supervision and protective equipment." He blinked. "I'm sorry, you're what, rituals? And protective equipment?" Her lips curved into that faint, knowing smile. "You will see." That first evening, Kalen discovered what sentiment rituals entailed. The air in the suite began to shimmer with visible waves of heat, carrying a complex aroma of warm amber, strange spices, and something like ozone. Zara, seated in the center of the room on a woven mat, poured a vial of iridescent oil into her palms. With slow, deliberate movements, she pressed the glowing substance along the elegant line of her neck, over her shoulders and down her arms. It wasn't overtly seductive. It was too ritualistic, too precise for that. It was a ceremony, a form of devotion to something he didn't understand. But the sight of her amethyst skin glistening in the dim pink light, the way her silver hair stuck to her damp neck, sent his thought processes into a full system crash. "You are staring," she stated without opening her eyes, her voice a low hum that matched the orbs. He intelligently replied, fumbling for a discarded datapad. "Just admiring the lighting. It's very pink." "Then you are admiring me," she said calmly. "I am part of the lighting. My bioluminescence is integrated into the ambient spectrum for harmony." He nearly tripped over the corner of the couch trying to retreat to the sleeping alcove. Later, when he finally sought refuge on his assigned bunk, he found she had already been there. The metallic sleep wrap she'd made for him was laid out with exacting precision, its shimmering surface looking like chainmail stitched from pure, unadulterated good intentions. He sighed, running a hand over the strangely soft material. You really do think of everything, don't you? She appeared in the doorway to the alcove, her form silhouetted by the main room's light. You will sleep safely and honorably now, beloved. Your intent is clearly signified. You don't have to call me that, he said, the word feeling foreign and heavy on the air between them. Her brow furrowed slightly, the glow there flickering. The term of endearment displeases you. It's not that, he sighed, sitting on the edge of the bunk. It just sounds weird, coming from you. It feels like a performance. She was silent for a long moment, processing. Then she nodded once, a sharp, decisive motion. Very well. I will call you Kalen. It is your name. Feels warmer. And somehow, the simple sound of his own name, spoken in her soft, melodic accent, devoid of any clinical title, was warmer. It felt like a tiny, first step on a new and terrifying path. Day 2 of the cohabitation trial began with controlled chaos. He woke to the sound of a melodic, humming tone and the distinct smell of ozone and burnt carbohydrates. Stumbling out of the alcove, he found Zara standing in the middle of their small kitchenette, which was now a scene of zero-gravity culinary anarchy. Eggs, their shells vanished, floated in the air like pale, wobbly clouds. A spatula drifted past his face, followed by a shimmering trail of what might have been oil. Zara was humming a complex series of notes, her hands moving in a conductor's pattern, and with each gesture, the local gravity fluctuated, causing the floating eggs to jiggle and sizzle in midair. What in the name of sanity are you doing? Kalen yelped, ducking a glob of luminous yolk. I am simulating the scrambled texture for your morning nutrients, she explained cheerfully, not breaking her rhythm. By temporarily disabling localized gravity, I can ensure even cosmic distribution of heat and seasoning at a molecular level. Denis, he shouted, the name of the human from the old story popping into his head in his panic. The word is stir. You stir them, with a spoon, in a pan. That has gravity. Her expression was one of pure, unadulterated fascination. Manually agitating the protein clusters? How inefficient and uneven. This method is far more precise. A little inefficiency is fine if it means my breakfast isn't trying to achieve orbit and taste like a reactor leak. He waded through the floating culinary disaster, his own body feeling light and unsteady, and gently took the spatula from her hand. Here, let me show you the human way. It's called cooking, not applied particle physics. He guided her through the process, his hands over hers on the pan's handle, his body close behind her. Her skin was warm and surprisingly soft. For a long moment, she was silent. Her humming ceased, her entire focus on their joined hands, then on the simple earthbound eggs as they slowly solidified in the pan, grounded by gravity. Your method is tactile, she observed, her voice quieter, more contemplative than he'd ever heard it. There is a ritual to it, a shared, physical focus. Yeah, well, he said, his own voice a bit rough. It's also how you get edible food that doesn't require a radiation badge. But his protest lacked its usual heat. He was acutely aware of her proximity, the scent of warm spices and ozone that clung to her hair, the way she leaned back slightly into the solidness of him. They ate at the small table, the romantic pink, lighting making the scene feel strangely, intimately domestic. The eggs were a bit rubbery and slightly too salty, but they didn't glow, numb his tongue, or defy physics. It was, by every measurable metric, a vast improvement. Progress, Kalen declared, raising a forkful in a mock toast. Zara studied her own plate, taking a small, careful bite. The texture is uniform. The flavor profile is non-conductive. I approve. She looked up, her binary star eyes meeting his, and for a second, he saw not an ambassador or a scientist, but just her. This was a satisfactory joint activity. He found himself smiling, a real, unforced smile. It was. The rest of the 72-hour trial passed in a similar rhythm of minor, bizarre disasters punctuated by these unexpected, quiet moments of connection. He accidentally breached her meditation bubble one evening, causing the glowing orbs to flash red and emit a low warning tone that made his fillings ache. She, in turn, documented his aimless scrolling on his datapad with the intensity of an anthropologist discovering fire for the first time, asking detailed questions about the purpose of looking at images of feline entities attempting to occupy receptacles too small for their mass. On the final evening, they found themselves sitting on the couch, the same couch he'd sworn he'd sleep on, simply watching the starfield drift past the large viewport. The silence between them was no longer awkward or heavy, but comfortable, a shared space of quiet exhaustion and something else, something he couldn't quite name. "Kalen," she said, her voice soft, blending with the ship's hum. "The cohabitation trial concludes in 4.7 hours. "I know," he said, not looking away from the swirling colors of a distant nebula. "My preliminary report to the Xenopsychology Council is overwhelmingly favorable," she continued. He glanced at her then, taking in her profile against the starlight. "Yeah? What's the verdict, Ambassador? Are we compatible?" She turned to face him fully, her expression unreadably serene yet profoundly earnest. "The data is conclusive. While our methods are inefficient, our biological rituals are perplexing, and your species' stubborn reliance on constant gravity is bafflingly conservative. The experiment is a success." He raised an eyebrow. "Because we didn't cause another diplomatic incident or set the kitchen on fire?" "No," she said, and she leaned closer, her warmth a palpable force in the cool air. "Because the initial hypothesis was incorrect." "What hypothesis?" "The one that stated this situation was merely a cultural misunderstanding to be resolved, a diplomatic problem to be managed." She placed a warm, gentle hand on his cheek, just as she had in the engineering bay, but this time it wasn't for an audience. It was just for him. "The data I have collected suggests a different conclusion, one that is emotional, illogical, overwhelmingly, infuriatingly human." Kalen's breath caught in his throat. The hum of the ship, the soft pink light, the silent, beautiful chaos of the universe outside. It all faded into a distant background. All he could see was her glowing eyes, her earnest face, the slight part of her lips. "Zara," he began, but the words evaporated, leaving him speechless. "I have learned," she whispered, her thumb stroking his cheekbone, "that beloved is not a title granted by a ceremony or a naked sleeping habit. It is a feeling, a deep, irrational, and persistent resonance. And I believe I am feeling it." He reached up, his calloused, grease-stained hand covering her slender, glowing one. The vast, impossible gulf between them, human and Vexian, technician and ambassador, chaotic and logical, seemed to collapse into that single, simple point of contact. All the differences didn't vanish, but in that moment, they simply ceased to matter. "Yeah," he said, his voice rough with an emotion he no longer had the will or the desire to fight. "Me too." He leaned in and she met him halfway. The kiss was not a protocol or a ritual. It was not documented or scheduled. It was warm and tentative and tasted of starlight and alien spices. It was clumsy and perfect. It was, for the very first time, entirely and wonderfully devastatingly real. When they parted, her luminous skin was pulsing with a soft, slow, rhythmic light, and a genuine, uncalculated, breathtaking smile graced her lips. "Fascinating," she breathed, her forehead resting against his. Kalen grinned, a wide, unreserved grin, and pulled her closer. "Zara," he murmured into her silver hair, "you have no idea." Somewhere in the ship's core, the AI chimed softly, a sound meant only for them. "Cohabitation trial, Phase 2. Status: complete. Compatibility rating: optimal.
Recommanding permanent joint Carter assignement."
And for the first time since he'd woken up with an alien diplomat on top of him, Kalen Voss didn't argue with the ship's logic at all. The ship-wide announcement of their optimal rating and permanent joint quarters assignment arrived not with a gentle chime, but with a triumphant fanfare that echoed through every corridor of the USS Horizon. Kalen, who was elbow-deep in a malfunctioning inertial damper, flinched so hard he nearly dropped a spanner into the ship's primary power conduit. GRX, who was steadying the housing, let out a rumbling laugh that vibrated through the deck plates. Hear that, Softskin? The universe itself approves of your union. You are now officially, gloriously stuck. Kalen groaned, extracting himself from the machinery and wiping grease on his already stained trousers. It's not a union. It's a bureaucratic glitch with feelings. But even as he said it, he could feel the ghost of her lips on his, the memory of her whispered confession making his heart perform a clumsy, unprofessional somersault. The reptilian mechanic flicked his tongue, his large, slitted eyes knowing. Tell that to your face, Voss. It is glowing brighter than a plasma torch. Before he could formulate a retort, the bay doors hissed open. Zara entered, and the entire energy of the room shifted. She moved with a new, unmistakable confidence, her usual poise now infused with a quiet, radiant possessiveness. She no longer wore the small holographic pin of his family sigil. She now wore a custom-made chest piece, a delicate filigree of what looked like spun starlight that incorporated his sigil at its center, right over her heart. It was bold, beautiful, and screamed, taken in a dozen different alien languages. "My Kalen," she said, her voice a melody that cut through the industrial din. The term beloved was gone, but my was somehow 1,000 times more intimate. I have concluded my diplomatic duties for the cycle. I am here to assist you. A few of the other engineers snickered, quickly turning them into coughs when Zara's glowing gaze swept over them. Assist me, Kalen repeated, feeling a fresh wave of heat creep up his neck. Zara, this is a high-tension plasma conduit. It's not really ambassadorial. Nonsense, she stated, gliding over to peer into the open panel with academic interest. The work of my mate is my work. Furthermore, I have calculated that proximity during complex tasks increases pair bond cohesion by 18.7%. I will observe and provide moral support. She then produced a small data slate from a fold in her gown and began taking notes. Entry 94. My human engages in high-risk manipulation of energetic systems. This appears to be a dominance display, showcasing bravery and technical prowess to his peers and to me. Note: his scent becomes more potent during this activity. It is agreeable. GRX made a sound like a choked engine. Kalen closed his eyes for a brief second, praying for patience, or perhaps a sudden, localized supernova. I'm not doing a dominance display. I'm trying to keep the artificial gravity from flickering us into the ceiling during the next course correction. A noble goal, Zara agreed, nodding sagely. Protecting the clan. This is a prime mating trait. I will add it to the report. He gave up, resigning himself to his fate. He went back to work, acutely aware of her presence just behind his shoulder, a warm, scented, and silently approving shadow. Every time he successfully rerouted a power flow or tightened a stubborn coupling, he heard the soft tap of her fingers on the slate. It was, he had to admit, strangely motivating. Later, in the mess hall, the dynamic had irrevocably shifted. Crew members no longer just nodded or winked. They now offered genuine, if slightly awkward, smiles. They were no longer a scandal. They were the ship's couple. When Zara placed a tray of synthesized, but correctly seasoned, mashed potatoes in front of him, a nearby table of botanists actually raised their nutrient packs in a silent toast. They are celebrating our successful bonding, Zara informed him, her tone pleased. Our union has increased interdepartmental camaraderie by a significant margin. The captain's latest morale report was most complimentary. Kalen poked at his potatoes. So we're good for morale. Great. I'm a talking happiness generator. You are my happiness generator, she said, so matter-of-factly that he almost missed the profound sweetness of the statement. She was simply stating a confirmed data point. He looked at her, really looked at her, sitting there in her elegant gown amidst the chaotic mess hall. her strange, beautiful face illuminated by the soft glow of her own skin and the simple pleasure of being near him. The last of his resistance crumbled into dust. "You know," he said, his voice low, "for a species that doesn't understand emotion, you're getting pretty good at it." Her eyes met his, and the glow within them seemed to soften, to deepen. "I have an excellent teacher." That night, back in their now shared quarters, the reality of their new permanent status settled in. His duffel bag was no longer by the couch. His clothes were in the closet next to her flowing gowns and ceremonial armor. His toolkit sat on the same shelf as her collection of aromatic crystals. The pink lighting no longer felt mocking. It felt cozy. Zara was performing her scent attunement ritual, and this time, Kalen didn't try to look away. He watched, mesmerized by the graceful, deliberate movements, the way the oil made her skin gleam like polished gemstone in the dim light. "Your heart rate has elevated," she stated without turning, her voice a low hum. "Is this a sign of distress or appreciation?" "Appreciation," he managed to croak. "Definitely appreciation." She finished her ritual and turned to face him, her expression open and curious. "The human texts I have studied are often vague on the protocols following a successful first kiss and cohabitation trial. They speak of taking things to the next level, but the parameters are poorly defined." Kalen felt a jolt of nervous anticipation mixed with sheer terror. "Yeah, well, humans are kind of bad at writing manuals for that stuff." She took a step toward him, then another, until she was standing right in front of him. "Then we shall write our own." She reached out and took his hand, her fingers lacing with his. Her touch was electric. "My research indicates that mutual exploration is a key component. I would like to explore you, Kalen Voss. And I would like you to explore me." His breath hitched. "Zara, are you sure? This isn't just about collecting data anymore, is it?" Her luminous eyes held his, unwavering in their honesty. "The data is a happy consequence. This is about the resonance. The feeling I cannot name but do not wish to live without." That was all the confirmation he needed. He let her lead him to the sleeping alcove, his heart hammering against his ribs. What followed was not the clumsy, frantic coupling of human holovids, nor was it the cold, clinical procedure her species might have dictated. It was slow and curious and breathtakingly tender. She traced the lines of his muscles with a scientist's focus and a lover's wonder, murmuring observations about his comparative softness and his surprising warmth. He, in turn, learned the patterns of her bioluminescence, how the light along her temples pulsed faster when he kissed a particular spot on her neck, how the delicate, almost invisible scales along her spine shimmered under his touch. It was a discovery, a first contact of the most intimate kind. There were moments of awkwardness, of course. A misplaced elbow, a surprised gasp at a temperature difference, a shared, breathless laugh when the metallic sleep wrap crinkled loudly beneath them. But every fumble, every quiet question whispered in the dark, every tentative touch that grew more confident, only wove them closer together. Afterward, they lay tangled in the bunk, the sheets a mess, the pink light, private sun setting on a new world. Her head was on his chest, her silver hair fanned out across his skin, and one of her hands was splayed over his heart, as if feeling its steady, contented rhythm. "Fascinating," she whispered again, but the word was filled with so much awe and warmth it sounded like a prayer. Kalen smiled, a deep, bone-weary, utterly happy smile, and pressed a kiss to the top of her head. "Yeah," he breathed, his eyes closing. "It really, really is." He drifted to sleep with the scent of her, ozone, amber, and something uniquely Zara, filling his lungs, and the certain knowledge that his accidental declaration of mating intent was the best mistake he had ever made in his entire life. The following morning, he was woken not by a weight on his hips or a melodic hum, but by the soft sensation of her fingers tracing the line of his jaw. He opened his eyes to find her propped on one elbow, watching him, her expression one of serene, unguarded affection. "Good morning, my Kalen," she said softly. He grinned, stretching. "Good morning, my Zara." The words felt right, They felt perfect. As they prepared for the day, moving around each other in the small space with an easy, newfound familiarity, the ship's AI chimed, this time with a direct message to their quarters. Priority communique from the Vexian Tripartite Council. Ambassador Zara, your request for an extended interspecies bonding study has been approved. Funding and resources have been allocated for a long-term, deep space mission aboard the UISS Horizon. Technician Voss, your contract has been similarly extended and your security clearance upgraded. Mission duration, indefinite. They looked at each other, a slow, mutual smile spreading across both their faces. It was no longer an experiment or a trial. It was their life, their adventure. Kalen reached out, took her hand, and pulled her close. So, he said, his voice full of warmth and a teasing note she was quickly learning to adore. An indefinite mission with my bonded mate. I guess I'd better get used to sleeping with the lights on. Zara's eyes sparkled, her bioluminescence flaring with joy. I have already ordered blackout curtains for your side of the alcove, my love. He laughed, the sound rich and full, and kissed her again. Right there in the middle. The reality of their indefinite mission settled not with a bang, but with the quiet, relentless efficiency of Vexian bureaucracy. Their shared quarters became a permanent home, a strange and wonderful fusion of two worlds. Kalen's worn, comfortable chair sat opposite Zara's hovering meditation mat. A small, potted Terran fern, a gift from the botany department, struggled valiantly next to a crystalline Vexian resonance stone that hummed at a frequency that made the plant visibly tremble. It was chaos, but it was their chaos. Kalen found the rhythm of it surprisingly natural. Waking up to the scent of her rituals, sharing meals where she now confidently used a fork instead of attempting to demolecularize his food, and falling asleep with the soft glow of her skin as a night light. The crew's perception had fully solidified. They were Zara and Kalen, the ship's unlikely but beloved power couple. The memes had evolved from Voss's naked negotiations to How to Tame a Human with Toast, featuring a series of images where Zara offered increasingly perfect slices of breakfast food to a cartoon Kalen, whose grumpiness visibly diminished with each panel. He'd stopped getting annoyed and started saving them to a private folder. Their work lives had merged as well. Zara's observations in the engineering bay had transitioned from clinical note-taking to genuine, if unconventional, assistance. She couldn't wield a plasma torch, but her understanding of quantum field harmonics was unparalleled, and she could diagnose a power fluctuation by simply listening to the hum of the conduit, a skill that left even GRX grudgingly impressed. One afternoon, while Kalen was wrestling with a bulky oxygen recycler, she stood beside him, her head tilted. The resonance is off by 0.03 microdecies, she stated. There is a microfracture in the primary emitter coil. The sound is sad. He'd learned to trust her ears. He opened the panel and, sure enough, a hairline crack was visible along the coil. Stars, Zara, you're right. How did you even hear that? It is a simple matter of acoustic interpretation, she said, but the subtle, proud flare of light along her cheeks told him it was anything but simple to her. He grinned. You're a better engineer than half the crew. I am an ambassador, she corrected, but she leaned into his side for a brief, warm moment. But I am learning the songs of your machines. They are very emotional. This new normal was comfortable, warm, and filled with a quiet joy Kalen had never known he was missing. But the universe, it seemed, was not quite done testing them. The challenge arrived in the form of a high-priority, encrypted data stream from the Vexian homeworld. Zara received it during her evening diplomatic briefing, and when she returned to their quarters, her usual serene composure was replaced by a tense, almost brittle stillness. The soft glow of her skin had dimmed, and her movements were stiff, precise. Kalen, she said, her voice devoid of its usual melodic warmth. We have a problem. He looked up from the maintenance manual he was reading, immediately alert. What kind of problem? Did the council change their mind? Are they revoking our mission? Worse, she replied, folding her hands in her lap. They are sending an observer, prelate named Zyler. He is a traditionalist. purist. He was the most vocal opponent of the Human Compatibility Project. He believes our bond is a farce, a temporary aberration that threatens the genetic and cultural purity of the Vexian people. He has invoked his right to a conjugal vetting. The term landed in the room like a lead weight. What now? Kalen asked, dread coiling in his gut. It is an ancient ceremony. Bonding was a political transaction between houses. The prelate will reside with us for 72 hours. He will observe our interactions, our domestic harmony, our emotional synchronization. He will test the strength and authenticity of our bond. If he deems it insufficient or fraudulent, she trailed off, the unspoken consequence hanging in the air. He can annul it, Kalen finished, his voice flat. He can take you away. Zara finally met his gaze, and the fear he saw in her luminous eyes sent a cold spike through his heart. He can have me reassigned, permanently, and you would be repatriated. Our work here, our life, it would be terminated. For a moment, panic threatened to choke him. This was it, the other shoe dropping, the universe reminding him that his happiness was built on a foundation of a misunderstanding. But then he looked at her, his Zara, who had learned to make non-electrified toast, who listened to the sad songs of broken machines, who slept curled against him like she belonged there, and the panic hardened into a fierce, protective resolve. No, he said, his voice firm. He's not taking anything from us. He stood up and walked over to her, kneeling in front of her chair and taking her cold hands in his. Let him come. Let him watch. He wants to see a real bond? We'll show him one. We're not an experiment anymore, Zara. This is real. We're real. Her hands tightened around his, and a little of the light returned to her skin. He will be looking for flaws, for inconsistencies. His methods will be intrusive. He will question everything. Then we'll have all the answers, Kalen said, a determined smile touching his lips. We've been through a privacy field failure, a cohabitation trial, and you're cooking. We can handle one stuffy traditionalist. A small, genuine smile broke through her anxiety. Your confidence is illogical, but it is reassuring. That's the human spirit, my love, he said, leaning forward to kiss her forehead. Now let's make a plan. We have to make this look good. For the next 2 days, they prepared for the prelate's arrival with the intensity of generals planning a siege. They reviewed Vexian bonding rituals, practiced their emotional synchronization by trying to guess each other's thoughts over dinner. Kalen was terrible at it, and rehearsed answers to potential invasive questions. Kalen learned the precise angle to stand to appear most supportive, and Zara practiced casual, affectionate touches that didn't look like she was taking notes. They were, in essence, preparing for the performance of their lives. When the day arrived, the atmosphere on the ship was tense. Prelate Zyler disembarked from his sleek, personal shuttle with an air of cold authority. He was taller than Zara, his amethyst skin a darker, more severe shade, and his silver hair was pulled back in a severe, intricate knot. His eyes, the same color as Zara's, held no warmth, only a piercing, analytical sharpness. He did not greet the captain or acknowledge the crew. His gaze went straight to Kalen and Zara, standing together at the bay entrance. Ambassador Zara, he said, his voice a low, resonant hum that lacked any music. Technician Voss, I am here to observe. He didn't wait for a response, simply gesturing for them to lead the way. The vetting had begun. The first 24 hours were an exercise in psychological endurance. Zyler was a silent, judgmental ghost in their home. He watched them eat, noting how Kalen passed her the salt without her asking. He observed their evening routines, his expression unreadable as Zara performed her scent ritual and Kalen read a data slate nearby, occasionally reading a funny line aloud to her. He was there, a constant, oppressive presence, dissecting every word, every glance, every touch. Kalen felt like he was walking on a high wire over a pit of diplomatic lava. He was hyper-aware of every move he made, every word he spoke. The easy comfort they had found was forced, strained under the prelate's microscopic scrutiny. During the second evening, as they sat in the main living area, Xyler broke his habitual silence. "Technician Voss," he said, his voice cutting through the quiet. "Describe the nature of your affection for the ambassador. Not in human poeticisms, in logical terms." Kalen felt Zara tense beside him. This was the test. He took a slow breath, setting his data slate down. He didn't look at Xyler, he looked at Zara. "Logically," he began, his voice steady, "her presence increases my neurochemical production of serotonin and dopamine, creating a persistent state of well-being that I have not experienced with any other being. Her thought processes challenge my own, forcing cognitive growth. Her happiness has become a primary variable in my own life equation. And the thought of her absence creates a psychological and physiological distress response that is highly illogical and entirely unavoidable." He finally turned to meet Xyler's cold gaze. "In the most logical terms I can manage, prelate, my world is objectively better with her in it. The data is conclusive." There was a long, heavy silence. Xyler's face revealed nothing. Zara's hand found Kalen's and squeezed, her grip surprisingly strong. The prelate simply nodded once and returned to his data slate, making a note. They had survived the first direct assault, but the war was far from over. The real trial, Kalen knew, was yet to. The second day of the vetting was a subtle, insidious war of attrition. Prelate Xyler moved from silent observation to targeted, probing questions delivered with the dispassionate precision of a surgeon's scalpel. He questioned Zara about the efficiency loss incurred by her emotional investments, pointing out that her diplomatic report submission rate had decreased by 3.2% since the bonding. He queried Kalen on the long-term viability of a species with such a biologically chaotic and sentiment-driven reproductive strategy. He even analyzed their shared grocery list, raising a skeptical eyebrow at the inclusion of both caffeinated beverages and Vexian nutrient paste, suggesting it indicated a fundamental incompatibility in base sustenance needs. Kalen's jaw ached from maintaining a calm, neutral expression. Every cell in his body screamed to tell the arrogant prelate exactly where he could shove his efficiency metrics, but he remembered Zara's warning. Any display of anger would be interpreted as instability, proof the human was an unfit mate. So, he breathed, he smiled, and he answered with a patience he didn't know he possessed, always finding a way to frame his responses around the strength and synergy of their union. Zara, for her part, was a marvel of diplomatic composure. She countered Xyler's cold logic with a new, warmer logic of her own, one she had built with Kalen. When Xyler cited a drop in report speed, she presented new data showing a 40% increase in successful conflict resolution, attributing it to her improved understanding of irrational, emotion-based decision-making. She defended their grocery list as optimal nutritional diversity, essential for a cross-species pair facing unknown challenges. They were a team, a united front, and with every passing hour, Kalen could feel the prelate's frustration growing. The man was a hunter who had come expecting wounded prey and found, instead, a fortified castle. The breaking point came on the final morning. Xyler, perhaps sensing his time was running out, abandoned all pretense of subtlety. He stood in the center of their living quarters, his arms crossed, his dark amethyst skin seeming to absorb the cheerful pink light. "This performance is adequate, but it remains just that, a performance," he stated, his voice dripping with condescension. "You have rehearsed your answers. You have staged your interactions. But the core truth remains. This is an unnatural alliance, a fleeting chemical reaction between two fundamentally incompatible beings. It lacks the depth, the permanence of a true Vexian bond. It is a spark, not a sun." He turned his piercing gaze to Kalen. "You, human, you play at devotion. But what do you truly know of sacrifice? What do you know of the silent, enduring commitment that defines a Vexian union? It is not about shared meals or public displays. It is about the unwavering, logical choice to put another's existence before your own, every single cycle, without the need for emotional fanfare." The air left Kalen's lungs. This was the core of the attack, a challenge he couldn't answer with rehearsed lines or logical terms. He felt Zara stiffen beside him, a low, almost inaudible hum of distress emanating from her. And in that moment, something in Kalen snapped. Not in anger, but in a profound, crystalline clarity. He looked at Xyler, and for the first time, he didn't see a powerful prelate. He saw a lonely, bitter creature who understood rules but not connection, who knew commitment but not love. Kalen's shoulders relaxed. The forced smile vanished, replaced by an expression of simple, unshakable certainty. He didn't look at Xyler. He looked at Zara, capturing her worried, glowing eyes with his own. "You're right, prelate," Kalen said, his voice quiet but clear, carrying in the silent room. "I don't know the first thing about a Vexian bond. And I don't care." Xyler's eyes widened a fraction, a flicker of surprise breaking through his icy facade. Zara sucked in a sharp breath. Kalen took a step toward her, his entire world narrowing to her face. "I don't have a silent, logical commitment to offer you, Zara. What I have is messy, and loud, and completely, ridiculously illogical. It's the fact that the sound of your humming in the kitchen is my favorite sound in this entire galaxy. It's that I'd rather eat 1,000 plates of electrocuted potatoes with you than a perfect steak alone. It's that when you look at me, I feel like the most important, fascinating thing in the universe, even when I'm covered in grease and muttering about conduit pressure." He reached out and took her hand, lacing his fingers through hers. "You asked what I know about sacrifice? I know that if you told me right now that I had to walk out of an airlock to make you happy, I'd ask you which one. Not because it's logical, because the thought of a universe where you aren't in it is 1,000 times colder and emptier than the vacuum of space. That's not a spark, Xyler. That's my whole damn sun." The room was utterly silent. The hum of the ship, the faint whisper of the air recyclers, it had all vanished. Zara was staring at him, her luminous eyes wide, shimmering with unshed tears of light. Her hand was trembling in his. The bioluminescent patterns across her skin were pulsing in a wild, chaotic, beautiful rhythm he had never seen before. Prelate Xyler stood frozen. His analytical gaze was darting between them, no longer just observing their words, but the space between them. The energy, the raw, unscripted truth that hung in the air, too potent to be faked. He saw the way Zara leaned into Kalen's touch, as if he were her only anchor. He saw the absolute, terrified, and utterly brave honesty on the human's face. He saw, for the first time, not a performance but a bond. A real, breathing, powerful bond that defied all his definitions. After a small eternity, Xyler slowly, stiffly, bowed his head. It was a minute gesture, but on a Vexian of his stature, it was a seismic event. "I see," he said, his voice uncharacteristically quiet, stripped of its condescension. He looked at Zara, and for a fleeting second, something akin to regret crossed his features. "The data is incontrovertible. The bond is valid. More than valid. It is formidable." Without another word, he turned and walked out of their quarters. The door hissed shut behind him, leaving them alone in the sudden, deafening quiet. For a long moment, they just stood there, holding hands, breathing in the aftermath. Then Zara let out a shaky breath, a sound halfway between a laugh and a sob. "Kalen," she whispered, her voice thick with an emotion so vast it had no name. You declared mating intent. Again." He pulled her into his arms, holding her tightly, feeling the frantic, joyful pulse of her light against his chest. "This time," he murmured into her hair, "I knew exactly what I was saying." They stood like that for a long time, wrapped up in each other, the threat vanquished, their future secure. The ship's AI chimed, a soft, almost gentle sound. "Prelate Xyler has departed. Conjugal vetting, passed with exceptional merit. Bond status, permanent and unassailable. Congratulations." Later, as they lay entwined on the couch, watching the stars streak by, Zara traced the line of his jaw. "My whole damn sun," she repeated softly, tasting the words. "It is a very inefficient, emotionally volatile, and thermodynamically improbable metaphor." Kalen grinned. "But," she smiled, a radiant, sun-warm smile just for him. But it is my favorite metaphor in any language, my love. And as the USS Horizon sailed on through the silent sea of stars, its most unique crew members, a human technician and his amethyst ambassador, knew that their adventure, born from a misunderstanding and forged in truth, was only just beginning. If you love HFY stories of humans changing the galaxy with heart and humor, subscribe and join our next adventure among the stars.